Assassin's Creed Shadows has been getting absolutely wrecked for months at this point. That we've seen multiple delays, we've seen multiple attempts at Ubisoft trying to silence criticism, and now that the game release is right around the corner, things are only looking worse for them because they are being ruthlessly mocked for the leaked romance scenes, the return to form reviews that the shills are spamming, and all of the lawsuits that they're threatening against critics. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. I think the worst part of this situation, truly and genuinely, is the fact that Ubisoft doesn't seem to care. They didn't care months ago when we were criticizing them. They don't care now that they're being criticized even by the Japanese government, and they're being ruthlessly mocked for all of the decisions that they've made. So we are, of course, only one day away from the release of this game. Everybody is talking about it, which I guess is good for them. But on the flip side, not all press is good press. And that's something that companies really need to understand that they seemingly don't anymore. And while, yes, there are some people who are very excited for this experience, and I'm glad to hear that, there are a lot of people who are just really underwhelmed with what we've seen. And I say this all the time. I want every game to technically be a success. I want every type of game to exist out there, even if it's not a game for me. I do not think that developers should be told what they can and cannot create, but at the end of the day, the market is going to speak for itself. Gamers are either going to show up and monetarily support when they're really excited, or a game is going to drop like a rock. And I think that Assassin's Creed Shadows will sell to a certain extent because it is a well-known franchise. There are a lot of people who are just going to show up and swipe their credit card and buy it to support the franchise name. But I think that if you are aware of what's going on with this title and some of the decisions that they've made, you're probably going to be staying away from it, at least until it's like 50% off, because we know how quickly some games drop in price now. But let's start off with the return to form. Now, this was a phrase that was being heavily used when it came to Dragon Age the Veilguard. Oh, it's a return to form for BioWare. It's a return to form for Dragon Age. And after waiting a decade for Veilguard's release, it ended up being a total flop. I mean, even now they can't give it away for free on PlayStation Plus. Basically, nobody's playing it that way. The only people that are really talking about it are gamers who are mocking the title, and it was just a very forgettable experience. They used the phrase, though, in multiple reviews, a return to form. Now, that is just a very cliche line. I don't think it necessarily points to, oh, there are reviewers who are definitely being paid to like use this particular phrasing, but I do think that it is pretty suspicious that it's happening with only a few select games, the ones that are supposed to be like the biggest launches of the year. That's how they were touting Veilguard. I mean, EA and BioWare expected that game to sell like 10 million copies over its lifetime, and it's only at 1.5 million after 4 months on the market as far as we're aware. They haven't given us an updated number. And now it's happening to Assassin's Creed Shadows, another game that has been kind of steeped in controversy. So maybe it's just a coincidence, but I do not trust the mainstream media. I do not trust these critics, and I would just recommend you wait until real gamers and fans of the franchise actually put their reviews out and give their opinions. I will be streaming this because for most of the games that I discuss on this channel, I do try to stream. If we have 100 people watching, that's potentially 99 copies not sold, or if the game ends up being really good, you can see in real time me admitting my fault of criticizing it leading up to launch and admitting, hey, this is actually really fun. I do recommend that you purchase it, but I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a game that a lot of people are going to change their minds on, given some of the material that we are now seeing be released alongside some of the reviews. So yes, we do have all of these outlets like Hip Hop Wired, The Gamer, The Escapist, Windows Central all saying it's a return to form, but we are seeing a lot of screenshots be circulated across the internet, really involving the romances. Now, months ago, we had heard that there were going to be LGBT romances within this game, which was a very controversial addition because when you have a historical figure that you are playing as and there is no evidence that he was ever interested in any sort of like gay romances, It just seems to get further and further away from their historically accurate claims that they've been making about this title for like years at this point. And now we do know that like these are confirmed, and one addition that they made was actually adding a non-binary male Japanese man as one of the gay romances. Noe is canonically a lesbian, and Yasuke can actually sleep with Nobunaga's sister. So again, another just like wildly inaccurate decision for them. Like, I understand that these are characters within the game and individuals that the real Yasuke would have interacted with, in this case, the sister. But that doesn't mean that he could just go around sleeping with everybody. This was always going to be a problem, though, from when we heard that there were going to be actual romance storylines within this as a historical figure. That's just a wild decision on their part. If you want to have a dating sim, go for it, but don't make your playable protagonist a historical figure, and then you're not going to face half the backlash that they are at this point. And of course, there are a ton of people now talking about this. The clip is going viral. I hate when developers do this. It's like the fourth wall breaking smirk right before the character's about to get it on. I can't stand that. That drives me absolutely insane. And here is the kissing scene itself. I suppose I'll just highlight it really quick. It's very awkward. Like, it seems so forced and just like unnaturally done. And I completely get why people would be so critical of this, to the point where Ubisoft feels like they actually have to have a legal team on speed dial to try to silence people. Sure, throughout history, there have been people of like unspecified gender in like stories and also deities and whatnot, but this is just insane because you have so many instances of different like sexualities in one single game. That's why it feels so unnatural. It's not like you have one side character who maybe you talk to 2 or 3 times of an unspecified gender that you interact with. That would be different. Instead, you have these romances with non-binary individuals and lesbians and all of these just bisexual characters who probably talk about their sexuality quite a lot. And if this was to be the case, if there was to be one person throughout a story in this time period who was a lesbian, they would not be outwardly talking about it. So unless the romance is literally the entire game and then it happens at the very end because you have 40 hours that spans within the game up like months upon months that you've learned about this character and that you've gotten closer to them, it's just not going to be in any way, shape, or form even close to something that could be slightly deemed historically accurate. And of course, this is going to infuriate a lot of people, and a lot of gamers are already voicing their distaste with the situation. Who doesn't remember the famous 16th century Japanese non-binary samurai Lord Fabulous McRainbow sashaying through the Sengoku period with their katana in one hand and a pride flag in the other? Clearly, Ubisoft's just giving us the unfiltered truth about feudal Japan. The entire games industry is in a place where they make games for their tiny minority echo chamber culture, insult the larger player base at every juncture, blame them for failures, and get laid off only to get hired by another studio that thinks the same formula will work, which is definitely true. We don't know everything that this game has to offer. We don't know if this storyline is like super hard to complete, if it's like the most difficult romance in video game history. I highly doubt it, though. I bet that this character is pretty flamboyant leading up to this moment, just judging by modern day video game standards. They want to make it very aware that, hey, this is somebody you could potentially romance if you want. And so I do think that over the next couple of days, we are going to see a hell of a lot more backlash surrounding this. But all of this combined with the fact that Ubisoft is basically threatening alongside the Canadian government to sue anybody that is criticizing their game is just wild to me. It is crazy that they have gotten themselves into such a bad situation. You've got Japanese gamers who are furious, you've got Western gamers who are furious and mocking you. You've got the mainstream media who's reviewing this game really positively, and it doesn't come across as genuine when they are using these like cliche lines like return to form that were also primarily used months ago when another major game release that was supposed to be a big hit and ended up being a total flop. And you've also got Ubisoft and the Canadian government coming out and saying that they are going to sue harassers, which we know that a lot of times now, unfortunately, companies and individuals call criticism harassment. So it's not like there's any like clear or concise guidelines on what harassment means to them, but they're just in a really bad situation right now. I'm sure I'll be talking more about Assassin's Creed Shadows over the next few days, but we are 24 hours away from the release and things are not looking super positive for them. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.